Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. My name is Stephen D. Kelly, and this is the Stephen D. Kelly Show, and this is TruthCat Radio, www.truthcatradio.com. It's now 6 p.m. It's Thursday, June 27th. Every day is significant now. 2024. The title of the show tonight, there's a reason for everything, is The Insane Cult of Victimhood. Why are you being a bully? How could you pick on that little girl? Don't you have pity? Excuse me. Before I go too far, I'm just going to give you guys a little bit of trivia. Okay, just now. Of course, I'm a bitter old man. I've been told recently. I'll give you. See how many of you remember there was a show out. It started on radio, 1945, and eventually, of course, went to TV. But it was called Queen for a Day. Okay, started April 30th, 1945 in New York. Anyway, Queen for a Day. Basically, what happened with the contestants, of course, the audience is mostly women, and they'd start the show and say, "Would you like to be queen for a day?" And then they would introduce the contestants, and each contestant would be asked to talk about recent financial or emotional hard times she had been through. And it would climax with the host basically asking her what she needed most and why she wanted to win the title of Queen for the Day. And often this request was for medical care, therapeutic equipment, sick kid, hearing aid, washing machine, refrigerator, whatever. Invariably, these women would break down and cry as they described their hardship. And of course, the winning contestant was selected, whatever you want to say, by the applause meter. So the worse off a woman had, the bigger the sob story, the more applause she would get. And they would basically play pomp and circumstance and put a crown on her and sit her at a big thing, and they would give her all these gifts. Of course, whatever it was that she needed, plus all this other stuff. And the other women, of course, they would also get stuff, but not quite as much. But anyway, this show ran for a long time. It just stopped here, May 27th, 2004. It was picked up by, I think, the last channel to run it, of course, was Lifetime. But it was on everything. NBC, ABC, it was syndicated from 1969 to 1970. And anyway, the bottom line is it never went away. So the point is that people, there's a market for this stuff. People like it. They get sucked into the drama of listening to hardships, and the more lurid the tales are, the more they get sucked in, and very often they try to put themselves in the place of these other people and imagine these stories, and as they're listening to the words of these stories, causes them to feel like they're part of it. They're experiencing these things. And of course, this is the beginnings of, mind control, for lack of a better word. Now, just to preface this a little bit, I'm just going to start out by saying that I first got involved with the CIA guys, as little as it was back in, 78. Just a couple of years after high school, graduating high school in 76. And that continued off and on for some time, but eventually it wasn't until 1990 when I was dealing with them, and it was actually the NSA. I didn't find out for many, many years later that I had my falling out, and I kind of became an enemy, a rogue. I did things to fight them. That's where my fight started with these guys. Of course, back in those days, I was all about lasers and weapons and things like that, but that's what I was known for. So when we look at the calendar and we look at how long people have been doing things, at least from my standpoint, my fight against these powers of darkness really kicked off in 1990 when I realized who they were, and I had to come up with a plan. And from that point on, it developed into, of course, what we have today, which is Occupy the Getty, which is the plan to end it all. Well, Along the way, of course, I went from guns and lasers and stuff to metaphysics and psychic astral projection, this kind of thing. But in order to do that, naturally, years and years had to be spent learning just about everything esoteric and otherwise that would be useful and applicable to these endeavors. And a couple of the things that were there, one more than the other, was hypnosis and NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, not the computer language. Now, myself, I didn't mind really learning about everything, of course, but as far as the NLP was concerned, that was not my thing, because to me that was something that people would use to try to pick up women in the bar and get them to bed, or make some kind of sales pitch. Now, bear in mind, I'm a salesman too. They used to say that I could sell ice to Eskimos, and I was really good, but I didn't necessarily believe in that technique. And of course, the hypnosis. Yeah, sure, I learned about it. I learned about the use of the metaphors and the trips and the verbal journeys and the stories, the ways you would bring people in. But here's the thing about hypnosis. First of all, it never worked on me. And second of all, you're either going to do it with your permission or otherwise, because it can't be done without your permission. So obviously, NLP and these other things are very closely related. Now, why am I talking about this? What does this have to do with victimhood? Well, there's lots of different kinds of victims. Obviously, with Occupy the Getty, the ones that we're focused on, most importantly, are those that are underground right now on the verge of death, to be eaten or sacrificed or slaughtered or whatever, tortured. And that doesn't mean that we don't care about the ones that go down there, get tortured, and then are released and come back to the surface. Obviously, we care about them too. Now, even people like Allie Carter was such a person who I believe did go underground and return, but she only did so with their permission, and I suspect was involved in killing other children who weren't so fortunate and were allowed to go home. But she's a famous victim, and she's one of the people I was forced to deal with. Now, one of the other things that I've been dealing with, obviously, in my travels is the concept of a targeted individual, and not necessarily the victim, but the means and technology and the devices used in such things. I myself was involved in a project called the plasma beam, which, when modulated correctly, could induce a epileptic seizure, and was intended to be built and fielded as a crowd control device. Of course, it never happened, but it was a harassing tool. But of course, there's all sorts of companies that provide this stuff. There's one company, it's called Sommertech. Look it up, Sommertech. It's a veritable candy store of dirty tricks. Anyway, so in my work, obviously, I have open arms for anybody that needs help, because we are very much devoted to service to others. We're very much devoted to saving lives. We're very much devoted to education. We're devoted to healing, all kinds of things. But mostly we're devoted to getting the word out about Occupy the Getty, because we believe everything else is a waste of time, except for this one message. So, once again, what does that have to do with victims? Victim testimony is important, because to me, a victim is not a survivor per se, although they like to use that word survivor. Survivor would suggest that whatever it was, the torture, whatever, is over. They've survived it. They've gotten through it. It's over. They're on the recovery stage, and that's it. So survivor is not necessarily a fighter. Survivor gives the impression that the person is broken, which you could say would apply to almost anybody that has gone through any sort of abuse of any nature. Now, everyone likes to talk about it, likes to imagine, use their imagination, and this is where the bad stuff comes in. Myself, I never really focused on what I went through. Obviously, I don't even remember whatever happened to me. Probably most of it happened before I was 5, so I only have little flashbacks and things like that. But that's not my thing. My brother, talk to him, he'll say the world owes him everything, but that's not my thing. Now, I, of course, built a life separate from the whole victim thing and tried to serve, and I got shut down and lost everything. So, yeah, I would like to have revenge for what they did to me. And I am, like I said, I have open arms to other people who have gone through the same thing. Back in the day, it was people who had issues with the CIA. They would come to me. Such was the deal with that plasma beam. Anyway, the point is that at one point, of course, you know what happened. The Getty, everything, the children, everything else, the psychic stuff, all that. The guns weren't so much. Well, let me just say that the operation that we have is pretty substantial, and there's a lot of people out there that do a lot of work for me, and they keep me informed of pretty much everything. They keep track of everything. Things that I can't pay attention to, they pay attention to for me. For instance, when I did a Twitter X Spaces thing, I did it about 3 times, I think it was, with the guys from Isaac Cappy's Army, etc. Well, anyway, I was informed about somebody that was listening. Okay. And this person was a very prominent victims advocate and is a follower of mine as well as a follower of one of the larger pages on Twitter that we run, which is, I don't run, someone else runs, Children Under the Getty. Now, I was made aware of that. Now, the first time I ever heard of this person was when someone reached out to the Children Under the Getty page, and that person was Kelly O'Brien, the daughter. Now, remember, everything's a legend until I know for sure, but the daughter, she said she's the daughter of Kathy O'Brien. Now, Kathy O'Brien, of course, is a famous MK-Ultra mind control, satanic ritual, child rape victim, et cetera, the whole 9 yards. Okay, the only unfortunate thing about her is that a lot of her victimization came at the hands of Republicans. I remember Ronald Reagan was the one that really caught my name, that and Tommy Lasorda. But anyway, that's obviously very dated, except for maybe Steve Garvey. She talked about Steve Garvey, who is now running for Congress against Adam Schiff. That's important. But anyway, I don't know. I think I did get to talk to her, but I may have had to talk to someone else. Could have even been this other person who I think is a handler, who was, what's her name? Her name is Emma Catherine. Very strange because Catherine, of course, I don't think that's the real name, but maybe a middle name. But either way, I was stymied every time I told my person, I said, well, have this person email me. Let them deal with me directly. What's going on here? What's the problem? Have them just email me. And it would never happen. And, of course, I heard a lot of stories about how because of trauma and this sort of thing, that it was very difficult. You know, me being a man, the victim didn't really want to talk to me, this kind of thing, this nonsense. Anyway, I really pretty much let it go. Now Kelly, of course, she follows me on Twitter, and I, like I said, I believe everybody, even Emma. You're innocent until proven guilty. Now, of course, my thing is if you talk to me, that's a great way of showing what's really going on. Now, myself, very often, you know, I've been in radio for a long time myself. I've been a public person since 2012. That's when I really went public. I mean, I've been fighting this fight since 1990 at least, but 2012 is when I got up on stage. And I'll just tell you, when I got up on stage in 2012 the first time, and you guys may have seen the video, But nobody had seen anything like that. Nobody had heard anything like that. Nobody had ever met anybody like me. CIA, NSA, yada, yada, laser inventor, blah, 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 bullshit, all that stuff. Reiki guy, everything else. And I didn't know who all the talking heads were at the time. There were people like Sean David Morton, Jordan Maxwell, Kerry Cassidy, of course. These are the famous people. Of course, there's lots of other ones out there that I don't remember. But the point is that back then, I didn't really agree with these guys. And none of them had the same credentials that I had, and none of them had anything close to what I had to say. And one time, Kerry Cassidy comes up to me and she says, you've been doing this a while now. This was a little bit later, of course. And she said, usually when someone comes out and exposes something like what you're doing, it only takes about a month before the forces that be come down and smack you and basically expose you or remove you or do whatever, delete you, censor you, something of this nature. And she said, but you don't have that happening. It isn't happening with you. Yes, you're right. It's not happening to me. Well, here's the thing. That was many years ago, 2012, of course. I was a senior then. I'm a real senior now. And guys like Sean and Jordan, they're gone. Carrie's become a Trump supporter, pushing the Q crap. Now, there's a lot of people pushing the Q crap, and I'll just say that there's a lot of people that are taking these issues like human trafficking and ritual satanic abuse, and they're using it for political purposes. Now, one of those people, of course, I suspect being used is Kathy O'Brien. Now, because of what's going on here, well, let's just skip to this. There's pictures here. There's one picture of here in an elevator with Sasha Stone, who's a transgender, recovering transgender, whatever, victim / who knows what the fuck he is, MK Ultra mind control. And she's got Roseanne Barr. What are they doing? They're going up to this is from his Twitter page, Sasha's. He says, when you're headed up to the Trump penthouse on the 60th floor with Roseanne Barr, Kathy O'Brien, and a pint of Chardonnay. Now, I look for the pint of Chardonnay, and all I see is Roseanne's glass. So I'm thinking Roseanne's drinking a pint of Chardonnay. She seems to have a pint of Chardonnay with her on all these photos, extra large wine glass. But here's one picture of Kathy O'Brien, and she's in front of a big hall full of people on stage, and she says, this is from her Twitter, I guess. It says, giving voice to the children at Trump International Reawaken America Tour Vegas, defund the New World Order, stop child sex trafficking. And it says transformation.com. Well, trans, that sounds very applicable. Okay, now, first of all, defund the New World Order. What in the absolute fuck? She has never stopped being MK Ultra, and her daughter, Kelly, will say the same thing. What is she doing supporting this pedophile? Why is she making this political? Why do these people at all think that this guy's going to do it? Probably because there's so many people pushing this shit. Well, anyway, what happened? Just the other day, what happens is I get screenshots. There's a lot of interactions, emails or whatever it is, direct messages that they do on Twitter, of course. And my people will have these interactions with these other people. Like, for instance, they're trying to interact with O'Brien, not Kathy. Well, Kathy, forget it. We can't talk to her. She's sucked in. But her daughter, we're working on trying to get to her daughter. I've had very significant witnesses that I can't even really talk about right now. But the point is that the other day I did this. I did those X spaces, and I told you that I had a report that this person was listening. Well, in these interactions, there was somebody that had challenged this Emma person to have me on her show. Apparently she has a podcast. I don't know how many she has on it, but apparently she has a good following, because I know some of her videos have like over 100,000 views. So it looks like she has a significant audience. People have been challenging me to listen to her shows, watch her shows. But I looked at the first thing that got my attention was that when When asked if she knew who I was, she said no. She says, I don't know him and I have never met him. Of course, this is a double. I didn't, obviously, we haven't met, but she threw that in. Okay. In other words, that's a half truth. Obviously, she knows me, but she said she hasn't met me. That's a half truth. Obviously, she hasn't met me. I thought, what? I said, hold on. I specifically know that you spent several hours listening to me talk all by myself on these X spaces with Keck, asking questions about Occupy the Getty and what I know and my history and everything else. So I personally was a little offended by that, because I thought, I took note that she was listening, but she's going to tell somebody that she doesn't know who I am, which in itself is insulting, after 12 years of doing this in the public. So I had to do a little investigation. I didn't want to get involved. Okay. I didn't want to get involved because, I like to ignore this stuff because it's like when I first came out in the business 12 years ago, went public, I learned from all these other idiots that I didn't like what they were saying. I thought they were full of shit. I thought, well, you know what? I have to have a better message. It's more important to have a better message. Right now, there only is one message, of course, and that is Occupy the Getty. Suddenly, we have these other people coming along, cashing in and making a career out of not Occupy the Getty, but the whole concept of this constant flow of victims. Now, before I get too much into these people, I should also mention a little bit more about the types of victims. When I mention people like MK Ultra types, we also have MILABs, military abductions, those guys, which includes all of the super soldiers. Now, very often these guys will use hypnotism to do regression to try to remember their journeys in space on super secret American Space Force vehicles. Little things like that. There's a lot of people. Now, again, I don't have any malice towards any of these people, and I'm not saying that any of them are full of shit. I take everything with a grain of salt, and if I've learned anything from dealing with the CIA and the NSA, it's that you have to have an open mind and don't attach emotion to anything you hear, because it's just information. So I don't hate these people. James, I love you. You're my buddy. You got to stop talking shit about Occupy the Getty, though, okay? Now, listen. Again, all I care about is that people talk about Occupy the Getty. Now, when I went to the web page or whatever it was, I think it was the Twitter page for Emma Catherine, where she, I'm sure she's got pages all over the place. But anyway, I noticed right away it said victims. Her thing, of course, was being a victims advocate, basically interviewing victims and whistleblowers. I thought, whistleblowers? Hold on. That's me. I'm a whistleblower. What the flock? What the absolutely flock? You're trying to be interviewing these victims of the satanic abuse. You know who I am. You've heard me speak. You know my mission. You know I plan to shut this shit down once and for all. You know my plea to everybody to just say it. Everybody needs to say it. But no. She went and denied me, like Peter. Anyway, I got a little pissed off. So I didn't make a meme. What did I do? I put a little blurb on Twitter, and I basically took the Twitter address for her Twitter page, and I posted it on my page, and I said, this is what COINTEL looks like. Now, bear in mind, I had already been aware of her. I've been aware of what she was doing, and to me, she was a handler. To me, she was Kelly O'Brien's handler and a lot of other people's handlers, and I realized that, yes, she was collecting victims, kind of like the Allie Carter thing, who I guess, and don't get me wrong, there's a lot of people that do this, at least there's a lot of people that this person here is associated with, who I would give the benefit of the doubt to. They seem conscientious, but at the same time, I'm guessing 100% of them are doing it for money. And if not money, then it must be just pure ego. They don't have an end game. Here's the thing about these things, and I'm trying to tell people, this is not a growth industry. You're not supposed to make a career out of it, looking for ways to make more money and grow your name and your reputation and your income stream and whatever it is. You're supposed to doing everything you can to make it end, not continue, not appearing at Trump things, talking to people about children, and we're going to go after the New World Order. We're going to reawaken America. Fucking bullshit. You want to reawaken America? Tell them to fucking converge on the Getty and demand they open up those bunkers. That's how we reawaken America. Occupy the Getty. Now, so yeah, I get a little uppity when I don't, people don't see my way because I've been doing this for a while and shit, and I'm kind of pissed off, because every day these children die. Again, now, immediately after I had posted this thing, I get a message. And the message came from a guy that calls himself Gray. Now Gray is an interesting character, and it turns out, of course, that he is her significant other of some sort. I don't know. I think he's more of like a bulldog. I think we call them pit bulls. In this industry, when somebody fucks with me, my pit bulls fuck them up. Now, in this case, my pit bulls generally tend to be women. It's just the way it is. Hey, probably because they love me and they'll kill for me. But in this case, this is her pit bull. And this guy, of course, which was interesting because when he approached me, and I'm not saying anything bad about these guys. Of course, I extend my hand to everybody. Pit bulls, of course, they bite you. But, hey, they only get away with it once. Now, I thought it was a little nutty because he was a so-called monarch, whatever, this kind of thing. But at the same time, the things he was saying kind of reminded me of the stuff I went through. And I thought, well, it sounds like you were in the same club I was in, like NSA type stuff. Well, here's the thing. He kind of posed himself as he says, what is it? Monarch, but it's gray area monarch, gray area meaning, kind of yin and yang, sort of a mixture, sort of no, not black, not white, but somewhere in between, kind of like a black hat, not a white hat, but in a gray area. Well, whatever, anyway. Monarch, of course, being mind controlled. Whatever. Now, of course, with the super soldiers and all that, the MyLab types, very much so with the MK Ultra types, they kind of latch on to this Stockholm syndrome thing where they feel special because this thing that will happen to them makes them special. They get attention for it, they need help, whatever. But in the most part, they kind of cling to it because it makes them special. And focus on the aspects of it. And the other thing they focus on is whether or not it really happened or what level of degree it did happen, and maybe it's just a matter of them trying to remember. Of course, I say that's all bullshit. My personal philosophy is if it happened in the past, forget it. That lesson's over, you move forward. Anyway, so this guy was such a character, and we had talked in the past, and I told him, I usually tell these guys to write a book, something of that nature. But either way, I don't think it went anywhere. I think he wanted to talk, but he wrote to me immediately after this post that I made about Emma, and he said, "Hey, man, that's my wife you're talking about." I'm like, "What? Oh, shit." Now, again, I'm in no big hurry to offend anybody, and I appreciate all of my followers, even if you're one of my followers, I'm more inclined to think you like me than to think that you're there because you don't like me. But that's my first inclination, just like people in general. My first inclination is to trust them and want to be friends with them. Well, anyway, he got a little bit pissed off. I saw he even made some posts and said something about, "Hey, you're looking like a fool." And of course, in my neck of the woods, they say fools is calling someone a fool is kind of like an affectionate thing. But me, where I come from, I'm a white boy. That's kind of fighting words. That shit triggers me. Okay, speaking of triggered, we're going to get into that whole triggering business. But anyway, this guy was kind of definitely got a bulldog thing going on. But when he called me up, he had a funny phone number, and I thought, oh, well, are you like selling solar or something? I thought he was a solicitor. And like, no. And I'm like, oh yeah, this guy actually gave my number and said, call me up. He says, no. I said, was this great? I'm like, oh, okay, cool. We're like just chatting right away. I think he was a little intimidated, but whatever. I'm open. I don't care. You're not gonna. Obviously, I'm not gonna be intimidated. So anyway, But after he kind of expressed to me how disappointed that she was, of course I understand they're both disappointed because they're both followers, and then I come on and say this mean thing. And I told him, I said, well, hey, I have already retracted. I retracted it immediately as soon as you said something. But I'll tell you something is that I have a lot of followers. They say a lot of things. They repeat a lot of things. They share a lot of things. And to me, this is all about perception. And if you want to have a good perception, you really need to have me on your show to show people that we're working together and that you're okay and that all these bad things people are saying about you are not true. I said, why don't you do that? Now, he said, well, why don't we do a 3-way Zoom call, not recorded, just between the three of us and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, what? I'm like, what? And I thought, yeah, this seems like, what are you going to try to do some mind control on me or some shit? Anyway, she declined. I said, look, just ask her, send me a link, whatever. She wanted me to apologize. I said, well, first you got to answer the main question. Why did you say you didn't know who I was when you watched me for 3 hours on this Spaces event? Well, now later on, he would go on to say that this interaction I had with my person that showed me that she was on my Spaces, etc., that was no more than gossip. But to me, in this day and age, we have screenshots of instant messages and this sort of thing, and that's not gossip, bitch. That's kind of substantial evidence. But anyway, so she comes back and says no and got all defensive about it. No, I had also thrown out, said, well, you can come on my show, because basically they were thinking that somehow I felt that I needed to be on their show, as if it was such a big deal that it would somehow I would benefit. Well, obviously I benefit from being on everything. That's why I want everybody to have me on their show. And if you don't, you're probably the enemy. Red flag. That's a clue. Anyway, so she refused. Said, no, you're not going to come on my show. And I'm like, wow, without some sort of pre-whatever interrogation thing. I said, well, you could come on my show. You can do it this Thursday. I'll have you on my show this Thursday, and you could, tell people what's up, and we could find out what's really going on. You could tell me if this Kelly O'Brien is real and whatever the deal is that you're doing, and, victim advocate, whatever, blah, 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 come into my backyard. Well, that was a big no also. And, of course, by this time, Gray, who, her attack dog had gone in full attack mode. And it's funny because when they do these, when they return it, they of course, it's all about pity. Why did you do this? We're just trying to help the victims and, on and on and on and on. Just sympathy shit and all that. Anyway, so I had to do a little more research and I had to learn a little bit more because to me, it didn't smell right. Okay? As much as I wanted to ignore this shit, it still smelled like shit. I had to deal with it. Okay? Because right now we're under attack. The whole mission is under attack. And there's a proliferation of enemy, guys like Sasha Stone, pretending to be working for the children. Ellie Carter. And a lot of these people, they look like nice women. I hate to say a lot of them look like they're trying to find a new career because they've aged a little bit, Liz Cronkin, that kind of a thing. But hey, what can I say? You could go on and on and on and on. Well, anyway, so I looked into this woman a little bit. And one of the first things I found out was that she was a wizard in hypnotism. She had supposedly, she was a master hypnotist. But more so, she was also a master at NLP. So I had to start studying NLP and hypnosis and a connection. Because believe it or not, they're connected. Now, and I'll say this, is that when you start learning about NLP, you'll see that primarily, at least the people who support it and think it's a good thing, it was only invented, I believe, in 82 or something like that. It's kind of a Marxist thing, but just like, what is it? Well, let me just put it this way. Not too long ago, we talked about philosophy. And in philosophy, it's really all about ethics. And the striving to achieve greatness and a good life through good ethics. Now, psychology, on the other hand, is some Marxist bullshit that was invented here modern, and a lot of people like to try to tell you that it has something to do with philosophy, but I'll tell you it doesn't. It has no ethics, for sure. And one of the things that came of this philosophy, or I'm sorry, psychology, is this NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. Now, again, they'll tell you that, well, neuro-linguistic programming could be used to modify behavior and change the brain patterns of schizophrenics and all this sort of thing. It's a good thing. It's a therapy right up there with, electroshock therapy. That's a therapy, too, that they use. But this one is invasive into the head, the brain, mentally. It's used to plant triggers and emotions and experiences and knowledge that doesn't exist, that isn't real. We can talk all about how they do it, but incredibly enough, go figure, it's connected right now to this victimhood cult. And here we have this woman here who claims to be this goddess of advocacy, victim advocacy. I just want to hurt why would you want to hurt this innocent person who's just trying to help the victims? Anyway, now before I get into the whole hypnosis stuff and the details of the science or the pseudoscience of this mind control voodoo, let me just pull up a quick little bit of history of the young lady, goes by the name of Emma. Now, again, I don't really care about Gray. I know Gray does a lot of dick stuff because he's the bulldog and all that, but if you ask me, Gray's a victim too. He may be a bona fide MK Ultra person that has been screwed with in the brain. But this little girl here, her specialty is screwing with the brain and manipulating and getting people to say and do and believe what she wants. Okay, so I found this thing that somebody provided to me, and it shows where it's an article. It was published in May 30th, 2018. It's for the Tahoe Cannabis magazine. Now, basically, apparently there's this company that I'm going to talk about here, and they hired her along with some other people. And, you think, okay, we'll talk about this company that she worked at. But what did they hire her for? Well, it's in her little bio. Let's see, what does she do? It says that in the past that she was several things, including a level 1 CrossFit trainer. Okay, I guess that's a trainer, a health, whatever you want to call it. Somebody hangs out at a gym and tells you how many times, how long, whatever it is, CrossFit. But here's the interesting part. She is a certified master hypnotist, and she has 15 years in health and behavioral science, which has led to her current position as an account executive with a Silver State Wellness Group, whatever you want to call it. And then it goes on, it talks about her life ambition and life-changing illness. But wait a minute, hold on. Okay, so before I go any further, I got to look up this Silver State Wellness. What the hell is that? To me, it sounds like shrinks. Okay, like some kind of, a crazy home, something of this nature. What is it really? Let me see. Well, I did a little search for these guys, and I found some old stories, some Facebook posts and all of them. And basically, and lo and behold, this Facebook post, here's a picture of her pouring a big brew. And I'm thinking, what? She's a bartender? But I look closer, and it's more like a showroom for some little, who knows what, in an industrial building. It's supposed to look like a pub, brewery. And the product that they're selling is actually cannabis beer. When I say cannabis, I mean THC beer. And it was just kind of interesting. And it's like, wow, cannabis beer. That's interesting that you're selling a cannabis beer, and yet you're a master hypnosis person. You're a master NLP. What's that all about? People supposed to come into the bar and tell you their life story, and you're going to save their whatever and correct it through your psychology, your hypnosis. We'll learn more about the hypnosis. Well, no, I had to do a little more research, and actually, this company this wellness company is just a branch of another company called Cannabiniers. Now, you look up this Cannabiniers, and first thing I notice is that it's San Diego, California. It was born in Little Italy, San Diego, California. Interesting, Little Italy. It sounds like a, dare I suggest there's a stereotype there. Anyway, in a prospectus, they talk about this company, what have you. They're trying to say how wonderful it is. They say that they had done a Series A live offering, and they raised $19 million. Now, bear in mind, this was 6 years ago. They raised $19 million. Says they're a food service technology and brand management company that aims to revolutionize the cannabis industry with a patented, safe, natural flavor-based extraction technology, yada, yada, yada. Iced coffees, teas, etc. That was what they were saying. And I kind of thought that was funny because, let's see, I went down a little further. I was reading up on these guys, this Facebook post, and they're talking about this. Here's a story that was in the San Diego Business Journal. And they're talking to this guy here that was running this company. And you look at it, and they're basically saying, what is it? It's a sales pitch to try to get people to invest in the company, saying, wow, they're going to make so much money, yada, yada, yada. And over here, they've got a little prospectus thing with the name of the president and headquarters, Little Italy again. Red flag. Year founded 2016, whatever. This is only a couple of years later, 3 years later. Well, anyway, they're trying to suggest that projected revenue, $1.2 billion by 2022. And I'm like, wow, they must have all kinds of money by now, huh? Seeing as it's 2024, and this is back in, 2019. Well, anyway, what I realized is right away is that the company didn't go anywhere. It's gone. It's dead. It died in 2019. It died right after they raised the $19 million. And I thought, wow, that's interesting because, I've been involved with companies like that, fake companies that were basically just there to fleece the investors. Donald Trump has done that a couple of times. They call it bankruptcy. But anyway, point is that's all this was. These guys, they knew day one they weren't going to sell $1 billion of any cannabis beer. They raised $19 million and bailed. Now, again, that brings us back to Emma. Why in the hell did they have this girl supposedly posing for pictures with beer like she's a little barmaid, but yet she's got 15 years of experience in mind control? Well, you know what I think? I think that this whole idea of the bar was they'd bring in the suckers that are trying to get to invest, and they'd have little girls serve them their beer and basically sell them on the thing. And, when you search into NLP, you'll see right away there's two groups of thought. And one of them is, first of all, that, NLP is a good thing. It helps people that need therapy with mental problems. It's a good thing, like electroshock therapy. And then there's the people that say, no, this is not okay. It's wicked, it's evil, it's manipulative, and it's used by unscrupulous people. There used to be a whole lot of people in the real estate industry that trained to do this, to sucker you into buying a house for whatever reason, and manipulate you. So this is not a new thing. Now, at the very least, a person that might be doing this might be doing it strictly because they can't find a job doing anything else, which doesn't surprise me because there's not a lot of money in this stuff unless you're working for the enemy, or they are working for the enemy. Now, it's kind of like the UFO industry and all that. People, they like to do the same thing with people who have gone through UFO experiences, and they basically walk them through a regression and a mind control and exercise and what have you, and describe that. But ultimately, they turn on them and destroy them and make them look like fools. And apparently this is what I've been hearing from a lot of the people that deal with this Emma people. Now, I was surprised at the very least that when I kept trying to deal with this Kelly over there, O'Brien, that I kept running into this blockade being put up for Emma. I'm like, it was like, really? This is like trying to talk to Allie Carter and being able to get through her fake mother handler person. Kind of the same thing I've experienced. So anyway, let's go back and look a little bit more at the good stuff, the NLP crap. Well, let's see here. I'll tell you, there's a part of this neuro-linguistic programming, which of course is hypnosis, but they don't hide it. They call it by many names. You could call it conversational hypnosis. That's a big part of it. You could also call it covert hypnosis, covert conditioning. They call that a mental health treatment, covert conditioning. Covert hypnosis is purportedly a method of using language patterns to hypnotize or persuade other people, but it's referred to as sleight of mouth, kind of like a magician that uses sleight of hand, which refers to their skill at making things happen which appear impossible. Covert hypnosis is an attempt to communicate with another person's unconscious mind without informing the subject that they will be hypnotized, also known as conversational hypnosis or sleight of mouth. Although both conversational hypnosis and sleight of mouth can be done overtly, it is a term largely used by proponents of neuro-linguistic programming, a pseudoscientific approach to communication and interaction. Again, there's a lot of people that support this. Now, in hypnosis, very often, of course, hypnosis is very similar to a controlled meditation or guided meditation. It works almost the same way. Usually, often in hypnosis, you're taken into a garden, an imaginary garden or someplace. So very often, at least a lot of times I've done it, you'll go into this garden and you'll approach a tree, and the tree will have an opening, and you'll go into this opening, and it will have steps that will lead down, deep down into a dark room. And that's basically how a lot of the hypnosis starts. Now, when Emma does a show, and this is kind of a thing that apparently a lot of these people do, is they will start out with a prayer or an invocation or something of this nature. Now, again, I haven't listened to it, to be honest. Someone told me, again, they said, you need to listen to her show for at least 5 times. You need to spend at least 5 hours listening to her show, and then you'll see. And I'm thinking, wow, 5 hours. Is that the magic number of exposure that you need before the program seeps in? Well, anyway, one of these things that they do in this process of this hypnosis is that they use metaphors, stories, and they'll use a what ifs or suppose this or whatever. They'll make changes, but the bottom line is that the metaphor is a symbol, and you'll see a lot of the victims, they sometimes refer to stuff like this. But what happens in the NLP is that the use of the metaphor basically is used to replace the reality. And a person will be hearing a story, a metaphorical story, which will be very similar to something in their life that's being manipulated. And so without knowing that they're focusing on their own issues, they're focusing on this metaphorical story. And they have what we call wide awake hypnosis, or hypnosis with your eyes open. And this is basically what happens to the people that listen to these shows, because they get carried away. They listen to these stories that are put out by these victims, and they imagine themselves in these situations. And this is the programming. People love it, and they suck it up. You know, it's funny that all this is going on right now because it's like about a day after or so that all this started. Paris Hilton appears before Congress telling how she was sexually abused and force-fed meds and all this sort of thing. I mean, her big issue, of course, was that when she was about 15, she was out running around and being a little slut at clubs, and her parents had to do something about that. You know, obviously they couldn't have that. So they forcibly threw her into a detention facility, which was one of these psychological places, kind of like a place that this young girl might have worked at. Young girl, how old she is? Come on. Anyway, she was abused by someone there, she says, and she's demanding that there be more oversight. So basically, what she's demanding is more mental institutions for kids. She thinks that vulnerable 15-year-olds that are too wild for their children or too wild for their parents should be locked up in a safe environment. A safe environment. But anyway, there's that victim thing. You know, real quick, I want to give you a couple examples of this victim thing in action because it's so prevalent in just about everything that we're exposed to, this sympathy and, oh, these poor guys. I mean, you could say the same thing about Ukraine, Slava Ukraine, the last Ukrainian. Those damn Russians. Speaking of damn Russians, what about that? Assange was released. Aren't you happy? Assange was released. Yay. Well, here's the thing that you got to remember about Assange. Now, first of all, he's a victim for sure. Can't take that away from him. He was in solitary. He did all. He's looking pretty healthy for a guy that was. I mean, if I was in solitary, I'd probably be looking. I'd be dead. I'm already skinny, but he came out looking a little on the chubby side. Anyway, point is that Julian Assange and WikiLeaks is a hacker organization. The Leak project was something he developed long after he was a very prolific hacker with a bunch of other hackers working in Germany. And what they did was they stole information from the U.S. government and they sold it to Russia. This is all back in the day when this guy's a kid. Now, of course, we all know and love Julian Assange for supplying us with all sorts of dirt on Hillary and the whole, what's his face, Rich. Seth Rich, we shall not forget you, Seth. And dirt on, well, I don't know, I think he didn't have dirt on Epstein. He had zero dirt on Trump, go figure. But he was certainly provided a lot of dirt on Hillary. Now, here's the thing. The guy spent a whole lot of time in Russia. He knows St. Petersburg and Moscow like the back of his hand. And when he was running WikiLeaks in Britain and the UK, it was being funded and housed by a billionaire Marxist. The guy was what he is. It's kind of like Edward Snowden. I mean, come on, people, seriously. No, it doesn't really matter because, first of all, you could say, well, was he a spy of Putin? Was Assange working for Putin? Well, yeah, of course he was working for Putin. He always had been working for Putin, but Putin's a nice guy, right? Assange is a hero. Come on, yeah, fight those Nazis, right? Kim Il-jung, you know, come on, people. I've seen this shit on the Q pages. They got it all backwards, but come on, seriously. So, point is, the cult of victimization. Yes, pity is overwhelming everything else. The pity that Donald Trump, you know, what they did to him was wrong. You know, it's like, why would you want to have sex with that porn actress at that hotel, you know, and pay her off when she tried to bribe him and stuff? I mean, come on. Wouldn't you try to get the money out of your company and hide it from your beautiful, was it third wife? I would. Well, maybe not, but I wouldn't be screwing a porn actress. I mean, seriously, who screws a porn actress, right? It does not sound safe. Yeah, maybe she's got one of those cards. A lot of these porn actresses, they carry a card that says they've been tested for AIDS. I'm sure she has one. Anyway, point is the victimhood is being used. I know a lot of you are probably watching the debate tonight. I know there's probably the regulars. Hi, guys, are listening to me tonight. But yeah, the debate's going on. Isn't that interesting? The debate. You got two guys, two old men, one in his 70s, one in his 80s. They're both wearing diapers, and there's a 2-minute delay in this debate, which means they can delete anything they want and they can do whatever they want. And it's kind of ridiculous that this is what passes for democracy. Well, anyway, back to the NLP nonsense. Bottom line, the little girl here, at the very least, is using her skills to manipulate and somehow control the narrative of these people. Now, a lot of what I noticed that she seems to be doing is directing the memories and the outcomes and what have you in a safe direction. A lot of times, this is a normal strategy. Like, for instance, with the Trump stuff, yeah, there's white hats and they've been saved and this happened and that happened and they're not here anymore and it got blown up and you don't have to think about it. It's kind of similar. They still think Trump. Now, Emma and Gray both said that they don't believe in Trump. They think Trump's the enemy too. And again, I extend my hand to them. But at the same time, I don't care what your gig is. I don't care if you're doing this for your ego. I don't care if you're doing this to pay your bills because that gig you had at the con job cannabis company was over once they took the money and ran. Maybe they gave you a bit of it. But they used your skills to manipulate people and get their money. How do we know you're not doing the same thing right now? You clearly have these skills, and you lied about it. You said that you're not a master hypnotist. You denied that, just like you denied knowing who I am, which is kind of personally insulting. Well, again, I challenge all those people out there that are in this business. You better start talking about Occupy the Getty, because right now Occupy the Getty is the only thing legit and everything else is bullshit. And no, I'm not a bully. You're just a manipulator and a liar. So victims need to stop being victims, and they need to be witnesses, and they need to man up. Sorry, little girls, but you do. You need to write a book. You need to record your stuff. You need to have a deposition. You need to not have anything to do with a hypnotist or a manipulative person that's going to manage you like Allie Carter's mother. All right? That's really what this is all about. I could have gone on and on. I'm only going to give you an hour, but I do appreciate all of you that are here. Once again, you got to join my group, which is Occupy the Getty / Stephen E. Kelly on Telegram. And all you people that have joined recently, thank you. And of course, the Twitter group has to grow more and more because we need more and more people saying Occupy the Getty. This is the bottom line. Everything else is bullshit. Stop masturbating over victims and start stopping it. This is the way you stop it, not by getting up on stage and supporting Trump and saying you're going to defeat the New World Order or some vague bullshit. Okay? You want to defeat the New World Order? Occupy the fucking Getty. Right? Now, if you want to help out economically, of course, you got to use my PayPal, which is StephenKelly714@yahoo.com. And please say friend or family, or I will send it back because I don't take taxes. I'm not a business. All right? And if you ever have donated before, I thank you so much. And once again, it's not, one of these days, who knows? It's not like I need a damn war chest for a lawyer because nobody will sue me. Anyway, once again, I am that cranky old man that they talk about. But one thing's for sure. I'm not a fool. I'm not stupid. I can smell your bullshit a mile away. And if I ignore it, it's for the same reason that I ignore all the Trump bullshit, because I'm trying to cast a wide net and I need you all involved. Okay? So get over your ego. Get over your butt hurt and your feelings and whatever it is that you think. You can figure out a new way to make money, but the bottom line is if you don't start saying Occupy the Getty, fuck you, you are the enemy. Okay? I don't care how many little girls you got that were raped by Satanists, because I'm trying to stop that from happening again, and you're just trying to turn it into a damn growth industry. It's not a growth industry. Okay? We're trying to end it and go back to having lives in paradise, not wallowing in the bullshit. All right? So with that, I'm going to once again remind you that my name is Stephen D. Kelly, and this is the Stephen D. Kelly Show, and you are listening to Truth Cat Radio, www.truthcatradio.com. It's really warm in here, of course, because I turned the air off. It's like, what is it? Oh, it's 90 degrees. Computers don't like it when it's 90 degrees. Better hurry up. It's 82 degrees outside, but wow. I'm going to turn the air on as soon as I turn the recorder off. Anyway, guys, it's been real. It's been fun. It hasn't been real fun, but it's been real and it's been fun. I'll see you guys next week. I'll see you in the room. And if you want to talk to me and send me messages, hate mail, whatever, send it to my law17gun at AOL.com. Okay? And if you want to extend the olive branch, or you want to say, hey, this is a big misunderstanding, I'm open for that. Okay? All right? Anyway, with that, I will say good night. God bless. Adios. And goodbye.